Hey, welcome back. All right, so in this tutorial, we are going to continue on with doors. Yes, doors, doors, doors. But this is going to be an interactable door. That is different than the other doors that we made, which were technically also interactive. The player could roll up to them, go into the trigger volume, and the door would automatically open. This one will make it so that the player has to press a key to be able to enter the door. So we're going to use the E key since we set that up for our interactable back when we set our player up in video number 20. So let me go ahead and demonstrate what I'm talking about. Right here we have the doors. This double door has been set up to be interactive, and so has this rotational door here. This process that we're going to do can be applied to any of the doors that we've created, whether they're single, double, or even sliders. So we get the little press E to interact, and the door will open up. Same with this one. And they won't close until we go back to it and interact with it again. Okay, so we're going to build on our previous blueprints, and we're also going to have to make a slight modification to our player blueprint as well. Let's go ahead and jump in. So this is our scene, and we're going to use this double door slider this time. There's no reason to use it or not use it. We could use any of the doors you want to use, so you can follow along exactly the same thing I am doing. Whatever I do will work on any of the other doors that we've already created. It's just a function of the door that's different. Okay, so if I go into my content drawer, the first thing I'm going to want to do is I'm going to want to find my player. So make sure you go in, open up your player blueprint. I'm going to change this from line tracing. I'm going to change the line trace because the sphere trace will work much better for this rollerball. One of the things I've discovered is that the line trace is pretty specific, and the camera has to be looking right at the object. So if the door is open, then it makes it very difficult to close it without looking right at the door frame or something like that. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to right click, and we're going to type in sphere, and we want sphere trace by channel, right here. Okay, and if you extend it down like this, it should look something like this. Notice right here we have hit actor and then we have out hit, but they're a different color blue. Even though they're blue, they're not exactly the same. What we need to do is we need to right click, and we're going to do a split struct. Now we can hover over our hit actor and hold the control button until we get the little hand, drag, and go to the out hit actor down here. When it was closed up, it had all of these outputs, and we could have, if there's an input node that we could have applied it to, it would have taken everything into consideration. But we specifically only want the out hit actor for what we're doing for this, for the interaction. Because if we take a look over here, that's the target for this. Okay, so let's go ahead, and now we're going to take this output, we're going to plug it in over here, and we can delete this. And once we do the check, we're going to make sure that it's true. Now, the next thing we need to do is, this one's a little bit different. We need to include a start and an end point for the sphere tracing by channel, and we also need to actually give it a radius this time. So the way we're going to do that is we're going to right click, and we're going to get player pawn, because we need to know where the player is in the world. So then we're going to go ahead and get actor location. We're going to split this. No, actually, we're not going to split this struct. We're going to leave it alone. Because all we're going to do is we're going to drag out from it, and we're going to hold the shift button and hit the plus key, or just type in add, and we're going to get the add button. Here in the Z direction, we want to be able to reach out a certain distance. So we're going to raise this up 65 units above the ground. So 0 is at the ground. This will raise it up 65 units above the ground when we start to reach out and do our check. Okay, we don't want it to be at ground level for this particular thing. And then we're going to drag out, and we're going to plug that into start. And we're also going to plug this into end. Now, the radius is going to be how big our sphere is. And I found with the rollerball that 120 works pretty well. If you're using a different character, you may want to play around with this. Have used and seen other people use somewhere around 65, 75 works pretty well for a biped character, but it also depends on how far out you want them to be able to interact with something. Okay, so 120. Now we're going to leave everything else alone except for this right here temporarily. We're going to change this to for duration. Now, if I forget to tell you to turn this off at the very end, this is how you get rid of the sphere, okay? The sphere will constantly show up for the duration of our interact as long as this is on. When you want it to be gone, you hit the none button. And then it won't have that feature anymore. So we'll compile it and we'll save it. And that's everything we're going to need to do to get our player set up. So let's go ahead and save this. Now the next thing we need to do is go to our content drawer. Go in and we're going to double check to make sure that we first have our inputs, our interact set up, right? So if you're just now joining me in this tutorial and you haven't followed along with any of the door tutorials or any of the player setup tutorials, then what we're going to want to do is you're going to want to jump back to video number 20. Okay, video number 20 right here is where we'll set up the interact, except instead of using line trace, if you sat through it this far, go ahead and go in, set your player up, and use a sphere trace for this. And then in our interactions, let's just make sure we set up our BPI interaction. So remember, we set up our interact as a right click, you type in interface up here because this is an interface, and we're going to set up a blueprint interface. We've already got one set up. If yours is here, then we're good. This is the one we're going to use right here. Okay. Now, let's go back into our content drawer. Go to content. Go to our blueprints and go to interactables. And right here for our door slider, since that's the one I'm going to double here or duplicate to make it interactable. And you can do this with any of the doors. It'll work exactly the same way. I'm going to hit Control D. I'm going to duplicate it, and I'm going to call this slider interact. Okay. Now with the slider interact, I'm going to double click and open that up. Okay. And we've got all this basically set up. We're going to make some changes here. The first thing we're going to do, though, is we're going to add that interact into our blueprint. So up here under class settings, hit class settings. Go over to the right where it says implemented interfaces. Click on the down button and type in BPI. And since we named them BPI underscore, they should pop up right here. Interaction is the one we want. So far we've done interaction and we've done a fire cannon one, right? Now to double check it, over here is where the interaction will be. We're going to double click and that brings it into our blueprint. I'm going to drag it and drop it right here at the edge because we're going to come back and get that in a few minutes. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go into here and we're going to hold the Alt button and disconnect the true from this first branch in our section next to the overlap for the box trigger. I'm going to select everything that supports that except for the door open. We don't want that. So it should look like this. I'm going to drag it and pull it down here out of my way. I am going to bring my interact in. This first branch where we're checking is door moving, we're going to want this because we want to do a check to make sure the door is not moving before we allow the player to interact with the door again. So we're going to hold the Alt button, disconnect it, and I'm going to grab this one, drag it over here, and plug it into my interact. All of the rest of this up to the set. So we want these, do not delete these. We're going to delete these. So we're going to do that. Drag it forward just a little bit because we're going to get one more node. We're going to use a flip-flop node, okay? So from the false, because we want to make sure the door is not moving, this should be false. We're going to type in flip, and we should get a flip-flop, okay? And we have an A and a B. So what's going to happen is when we first come up to it, it's going to do A. So when we hit the E key, A will happen, it'll open the door. The next time we hit the key, it'll do the second thing that we have selected, which is the B key. And so in B, it will close the door. Every other time, it'll do A or B, A or B. And because we have it set up to do checks, we'll make sure that the right door will be open and closed when it should be. Now I'm going to compile and save that. If I go back into my sandbox, find an empty spot, and drag out my sliding door interactable, I'm going to hit save. Now we're going to do a check. We're going to see to make sure that the interact works and that the door does indeed slide open. So I'm going to hit the play button. and I'm going to go up to the door. And if I hit the E key, it should open. I should get that green sphere, and I should have a little red dot that shows up on the door. If I move out, it shouldn't do anything. I should go back. And the door should close. Okay, so now we know that the interact is working. We get the little green sphere. And the door opens and closes as it should. And I can't open or close it when it's in the process of doing the opening and close. So I can smash that key and nothing happens. Not until it's all the way one or the other. So flip-flop's working and our interact's working. So the next thing we're going to do is actually just sort of a little thing that makes it kind of a nice game piece add, that if you decide you don't want it, then you can stop here. If you want to add it in so that when our player comes up to the door, we get this kind of nice little press whatever key to open, that'll pop up. And that's what this is all about right here. So what we're going to do is when we come into the overlap, it'll check to see if it's a player, and then it's going to do something. And in this case, what we want it to do is we want to turn on a text. So over here in the add button under components, hit add, type in text, and what we want is we want the text renderer. And I'm going to change this from text renderer to interact text. And maybe it should have been open text or something like that. But anyway, we'll just call that interact text. And what we're going to do is over here on the text side with that selected, we're going to make some changes. The first thing is right here where it says text. We're going to change that to press E to open. This is going to be the text that'll pop up. Whatever you want it to say, for me, I'm going to say press E to open. The other thing is going to be when we go in and we compile and look at our viewport, we can see that that text is pretty large. If you're okay with it being that big, then leave it alone. I'm going to put this kind of right here in the middle at about 85 so that it's at this height, mostly just for my reference. We're going to end up changing it later on anyway. So I'm going to go ahead and compile and save it. Now, if we go back into the event graph, we're going to go ahead and go back over here. I'm going to change this from 26 to 12. I don't know why I went back into this. And if we go back to the viewport, we can see that it's gone down. It shrunk a little bit. And that works well. The other thing we need to do is now that we know what it looks like, we can go ahead and uncheck visible right there. Okay. And that is everything we're going to change here. Compile it and save it. Go back to the event graph. Now, we need to make it so that it becomes visible when we overlap and disappears when we leave. So let's grab that interact text and drag it out here. We're going to come off of here and we're going to type in set visibility. And we're going to want to set visibility. And I'm going to hit Control D while it's still selected and duplicate it so that we can do the opposite. Up here, we're going to set new visibility. We're going to make that true. So when it's the player and it rolls into the box, it's going to make it visible. When our player leaves, so I'm going to plug this in here, and our player leaves, we're going to make this text invisible, so we leave it unchecked. So check it, unchecked, so true and false, right? Okay, now we're going to need to tell it basically where we want it to appear. So I'm going to select this section right here, and we're going to drag this down and that down quite a ways, give myself some room to work, because we're going to put some things here in the middle. I'm going to put that kind of in the middle there. Okay, the first thing we're going to need to do is we're going to need to set world transform. So we're going to, when it first appears, we want it to tell it where and how to appear. So we're going to set world transform, and it's going to give us the option for the interact text. Perhaps there it is. So this is the one we want. We want the set world transform interact text, and I'm just going to select that text and delete it and connect this one in. So I only have one in here. I don't need multiples. I'm just going to kind of drag it around, something like that. Okay, so what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to set the transform. And the reason why we're using transform is because if we right click here and we split the struct pin, transform includes location, rotation, and scale. We're going to set the location and the rotation. We're going to right click. We're going to split the struct. for the transform, and split the struct pin for the rotation. So location and rotation should be split. We're not going to do anything with scale. The first thing we want to do is we're going to want to tell it what side of the door to appear on. So we're going to just get the actor location so that it knows which side of the door when the player rolls into the box, it's going to appear wherever the player rolls into the box at. So we're going to drag out and we're going to get actor location. We're going to split this struct pin and we're going to use the value for X so that it'll appear on the same side of the door as our player. We're going to also want to have it appear in a relative position to the door frame. So we want to kind of position it in the door frame a certain way so it's seen. So we're going to grab the door frame because it is a more consistent position than the door will be. Because remember, the door is going to move. They're either going to slide open or they're going to rotate. But the door frame is going to be the center point of our blueprint. So if I click on the door frame, it's going to be the center point of our blueprint, and it'll appear right here, and we'll have our reference for our position for the Y and the Z in this location right here. So we're going to drag off of here, and we're going to get world location. And we're going to get world location right there. And again, we're going to split this struct. We're going to take the Y value from this, so that's going to be referenced in the center point of that door. So it's going to be wherever that door position is in the center. And then we're also going to need to get the Z location, but we're going to want to bump that up. Remember how we talked about positioning things in the doorway for the sphere, 65 up so that it would be high enough for it to interact. We also want it to be 65 up here. And again, you can play around with this until you get the look that you want. But I'm going to drag off from there, and I'm going to hold the shift and hit the plus button and get the add. For the add, I'm going to bump this up 65, and then I'm going to plug that into the Z transform right there. Drag this back a little bit. Okay. Now the last thing we're going to need to do is we're going to need to make sure that it's looking in the right direction. So if I compile and save this right now, what's going to happen is it's not going to be looking in the right direction. It'll appear on one side facing the right direction, and on the other side it'll be 180 degrees away from us. So if I take off from the player pawn, we can actually get the controller. So the direction that the controller is looking in the world. So let's go ahead and say get control, and we want control rotation. We want to get control rotation. And yes, again, we need to split this struct. And if we were just to take the Z rotation right here and plug it in, it's going to be 180 degrees in the wrong direction. Let me show you what I'm talking about. You don't have to do this. So if I hit play, because it's taking in for the direction that the player is looking, it's going to have press the E to open facing the wrong direction no matter which way we come into this box. It's always going to be the wrong direction because it's taking into consideration the direction that the player is looking. We want to rotate that 180 degrees. The way we're going to do that is the same way we moved it up 65 degrees in the Z above. We're going to drag out from there, hit shift and the plus key. We're going to get the add button. In here though, we're going to type in 180. We want it to rotate 180 degrees so it's facing in the right direction. We're going to plug that in right there. Okay, so let's go ahead and compile and save. I'm going to highlight this whole thing, hit the C key. I haven't been really good at telling you to comment, but don't forget. And this is how we're going to set interact text. All right, so let's hit compile, save, go in, hit play. And then if I come up onto this and I hit the E key, I get the text work in the right direction. If I come back into the box, just look at the text. It's working. Hit the E key. The door is going to close. Okay, great. Now, a couple little things to take care of real quick. The first one's going to be back inside the door. If we go to the viewport, the text was appearing all the way at the very edge of the box. So whatever direction the player is coming in, as soon as it makes contact with the box, the text appears. The text is going to be at the very edge. This box was set up for our being a trigger to open and close the doors. We're now using it to do to be visible for our text, so we're setting our text up. It doesn't need to be this wide because the text is way out of context. So I'm going to type in and hit 50 and bring that a long ways in so the text is a lot closer to the player. That way the camera sees it. The player won't roll past it. And the other thing is to go back to the player and turn off the debug type. We're going to say none, hit compile and save it. I'm going to hit play and test everything out. If I go up to the door, the interact should be right there. And you can even move that up. I have it at 65, maybe try 75 and play around with that. Okay. And now everything should work the way it's supposed to. And open and close as it should. Okay, so that's it for this tutorial. Hopefully you got something out of it. I didn't lose you. It's really pretty straightforward. Anything we just did will apply to all the other types of doors that we created. So you should be able to follow along nice and easy with that. I wish I could say this was going to be the last door tutorial. We are going to do one more door. And that door is actually going to be a little bit more complicated because now we're going to do a check to make sure that the player has the right key. And that's going to involve a little bit more complicated of an interaction system. And we're going to do that in the next tutorial. So again, if you liked what you saw, please hit the like button, help me out there. And don't forget to subscribe so you can watch out for that next tutorial. Thanks for playing. I'll see you next time.